collar crypto. Looping for blockchain, equip you with the skills. You can go to the top, man. Presented by Blue Collar Crypto. It's easy to learn. You can master the cosmos and make an upturn. Let's go. 5 stars for the show. Yes, you already know.
Hey guys, how y'all doing? Welcome to another episode of Blue Collar Crypto. We are here with Migaloo, and we're going to talk about what Migaloo's working on, what they're building. So why don't you go ahead and kind of introduce yourself for a minute and tell us who you are.
Hey guys, my name is Patrick. I go by Calaibi, on the TGs and Discord and X. I'm the CFO at Migaloo Foundation, where we kind of oversee the development of Migaloo blockchain, which is a permissionless L1 Cosmos-based SDK chain. And yeah, I guess just a little bit about me. I've been in the space for about 4 years and kind of just got started in this role this June. So I had been in the film industry for a while and a DeFi power user for the past 4 years. And now I'm going to put my skills to work for our community and our users.
Nice. How are you doing? Let's get a kind of relaxed atmosphere, man. Like how's your day going today?
You know what? My day is going, it's been busy, lately. So when I started, it was kind of like, let's get the books done. I don't know if any of y'all have ever done like a crypto reconciliation of 2 years of transactions, but that's basically how I got brought into this. Because I did it on my own from my own personal, because it's, I don't know if anyone has ever done it, but it's like, it cost me $10,000 the first time. And the second time I was like, I'm just going to do this myself, right? I'll figure it out. And it took like 3 months, but I did it, and, pretty accurate. And then I kind of used that knowledge, and Migaloo kind of came to me because I've been in Migaloo since when they were White Whale, which is an arbitrage platform on Terra V1 back in the good old days. Tier. I don't know if you were there for that, but if you know, you know. There you go. I was involved with their initial liquidity bootstrapping pool and all the way to their migration airdrop into their own chain, and then I got to use my not really financial background, but I guess interest in finance. And, I've kind of ran a business with my dad before, have some, knew a fair amount about accounting, and they kind of contracted me to do that. So that's kind of how I started. And I was just doing contract accounting work. And then I hopped in and started doing that full time. But it's really picked up, honestly, in the last, I would say 3 to 4 weeks. There is a lot to do. So my days I start around 5:30 or 6. I walk the dogs, I get some coffee going, I do a little yoga, and then I take a hot shower in it with a cold one, and then I get going by 8:30 or 9. And I pretty much go, I try to take breaks when I can, but I'll go to 3 p.m. and then take a break, walk the dogs again, and come back. So my day has been busy. How about yours?
I'm a full-time bartender. So I'm in Texas, and we have a tourist attraction place, I guess you'd call the Stockyards. And so I bartend.
Oh, I'm familiar.
Yeah. So I bartended with tables down there. I love the little gig, you know what I mean? I get to meet a bunch of new people. I probably orange pilled a good 100 people in the last 5 years, you know what I mean?
That's pretty good, dude.
Yeah.
What's your hit rate?
I don't know if you're familiar with Coinbase, but like Coinbase, they offer the rewards for referral. You get $10 Bitcoin for referring people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So 2 years ago, I maxed that out. I capped out. I couldn't refer to more people. So
I'd say that's pretty good.
Yeah. I do. That's the whole thing. If I know you're very new to the space, like you don't know anything about nothing, I typically tell you stay on Coinbase and buy the big dogs. Buy Bitcoin, buy Cosmos, buy Atom. Unless I have time to sit down and kind of really guide you the right way on how to set up a wallet and how to use osmosis and how to use a DEX. I just kind of, if I've only got with you 20 minutes, I'm like, hey, just, buy Bitcoin. You'll be okay.
Pat him on the back, send him on their way out.
Yeah, you're okay, but
yeah, and then once start mentioning seed phrases and hot wallets and cold wallets, and their eyes start glazing over, and you're like, oh boy, I've lost them.
Yeah, you can't really do that. You gotta ease them in, and once they get that initial seed put in them, then they go out and they do their own research, and like we all did. We all went through there and we all read articles watched YouTube videos and listened to podcasts. Like that's what you do in a space, Hopefully we'll be like El Salvador where they teach it in middle school,
I mean, or, maybe a blockchain can start a perpetual fund where they start funding education.
Yeah, I love that.
Like those kind of things are possible.
Yeah, I love that. Tell us, for the people who don't know what Migaloo is, who the founders were, like how they got started, where they at now. Like, give us a little backstory about Migaloo.
Yeah, so Migaloo, which, as I mentioned earlier, started as a arbitrage platform and but not under the name of White Whale, which it still does have that name today for its decentralized exchange. But back in the day, it basically was helping to keep the peg with UST stablecoin on Luna. And, I think they were a couple months in by that point, right around the crash. And, during the crash, obviously, people had to salvage what they could. And I think they took a couple months to just, take it easy. And I think they came up with a game plan, and they were talking with Jacob, I think, from Notional. This part of the history, since I wasn't really there, I don't know a whole lot about. They talked to him. He helped them, hey, look, you should get a chain going. And then they actually were in talks with Do Kwon before he got, incarcerated.
Yeah.
And he was like, look, the last thing I'm building is the Alliance module. I think y'all could really use that. And we can get into that because it's a core part of what we're trying to do. It's one of our main Lego blocks. And they were able to raise some funds. I have actually done the accounting on it. But they were able to acquire a couple million. And most of those funds have vested by this point. And then they got to work building out a chain. And it started off pretty bare bones. I think they released their DEX, which they use the same name, White Whale, but then they turned into more of a DEX. They kept their flash loans. So we have flash loans that people can use to fund arbitrage bots. So flash loan is something that happens all within a single block. If the contract says, oh, you'll make money on this, they'll issue the funds and then extract, and then basically gets paid back. You get your profit, and then the vault takes a little cut on top. And then they built on top of that their DEX. So, and they started off on Terra 2.0, not Terra Classic. And then from there, they built their chain, Migaloo, and built their, opened up another platform there, their White Whale DEX there, because White Whale is a cross-chain DEX. It's on Migaloo, it's on Terra, it's on Osmosis, it's on Sei, it's on Juno, Terra Classic, Archway. So we've got our DEX, like we call them satellites, they're on each one of those chains. And then we have our Migaloo chain, which it kind of puts us at a unique spot where, I guess we really leaned into the app chain thesis, which I think is still yet to bear, is it successful? I think it's still kind of up in the air, right? We're still kind of working through that. But I think what we're seeing is we experiment a lot, right? We try, we're on the fringe, right? We try, new stuff comes up, we try it, we see what happens. Not all of our things are success, but some of them have been successes. And I think we're at that point where, we're learning what works, and we need to focus on that and, build on that instead of, because at a certain point, you got to get past the experimental phase and, what works, and then fine-tune that and polish it, and then kind of just working on UI and UX. So, I mean, to me, Migaloo, from what I've seen, because of its ties to Terra, regardless of what happened and how you feel about it, and it was terrible and cataclysmic, there was a lot of mind share there. There's a lot of intelligence. There was a lot of people with a lot of talents across many different domains. And I mean, you see that there's Mars Protocol, there's Astroport, Apollo, Prism, Migaloo. Terra got blown up, but the pieces of it are still kind of intact today. And Migaloo, I think, is a part of that. And the people I've met, you being one of them, users, people on different DAOs, on Ash DAO, Guppy DAO, we can get into some of that. I mean, they're just some of the most motivated, interesting, and fun people to work with. And I think for the most part, we try to keep it drama-free, but, it's humans, right? There's always going to be drama.
Always.
So, to me, it's a very hyper-specialized L1 that coordinates people with a lot of different talents. It's kind of a sandbox, if you will.
Yeah. So for those who wasn't in the space for the Terra Luna collapse, in a very short summary, they had an algorithmic stable coin that depegged, and a lot of liquidity was lost very quickly. Do Kwon was the founder. It's one of those subjects where you got to do your own research because there's evidence that supports that he tried to pump liquidity in to stabilize it and repeg it. And then there's some that call him a fraud. You really got to go in with an open mindset and just kind of read the facts and figure out where you kind of stand on that. Like you said, you have a lot of protocols that are building that have app chains now. Just to summarize, what he was talking about with the Luna collapse. And then from that, you have Terra 2.0. So
$60 billion in 5 days.
Yeah.
Just to put a number on it. And it's just Google Luna UST and ChatGPT. You can go down the rabbit hole. But I agree. I mean, you can definitely. There's a lot of sides to the story, but yeah, it's still the holy grail, I think.
Yeah.
Algorithmic or partial or whatever. That like a true decentralized money or stable unit.
You had a lot going on there in that time frame. Within those few months, like you had Terra Luna. You had Celsius, you had Three Arrows Capital, you had FTX, and I'm talking about this is just like compound month after month after month.
I think all of those, really, Luna got they were all interconnected, adversarially or through funding, the whole thing got lit up. And all of that stuff was really kind of connected.
Now, I read an article. I'm not 100% sure if all this is true, but I read an article that SBF, Sam, he was actually selling Bitcoin to keep the price down during the last bull market because he was already owing investors a bunch of money. So he was trying to hold the price down. I mean,
I could do that.
It's just kind of counterproductive of everything we kind of stand for. But, he's in prison for a long time. Making guards slaughter rich.
I think you need that. I know it sounds maybe counterintuitive. This is just the market finding itself. The snake oil salesmen, they're going to be a part of any new industry. You can't fight that. Now, what you do afterwards will maybe it's regulation or, but smart regulation that doesn't squash innovation and kick people out of certain areas or certain countries, let it flourish. But that kind of flushing, the market eventually found it bored out, that the emperor had no clothes. And, the market, it might take a while. All the darkness will come to light at some point.
Well, you also see inside the market, from my experiences, you'll have these runs, 5% up, 10% up of volatility going up. And then you start seeing the long positions accumulate. And then the market will be like, oh, wait. No, we're not doing that. Let's go ahead and liquidate all y'all. It just corrects itself. So Migaloo, it has its DEX, which is the white whale DEX, right?
Yep.
I own a Migaloo NFT, which is pretty cool.
Which one? The Migaloo whales?
The Migaloo whales, yeah. I want to say I got it on Backbone Labs. I want to say that's where I got it. Yeah, it's pretty cool. A huge fan of Backbone Labs too, the Sin,
Yeah, they've got a very interesting model. I mean, they're a whole part of our, they built on Migaloo. They were one of the first there with their liquid staking tokens because they're a liquid staking provider. And on top of that, an NFT marketplace.
Yeah.
And on top of that, kind of like an NFT finance. So they're kind of building on hey, it's art and it's cool. You get to be part of this group. But you also get a share of the fees that are generated from these liquid staking tokens. So that's what Migaloo whales do. So Migaloo whales are what they call their grave digger for the B whale liquid staking token that is created by Backbone. And so if you own 3 of those, and I think if you stake them now with the DAO, you then earn B whale on your Migaloo whales.
And this recently moved to DAO, right?
Yeah, so for a while it was soft staking. So if you just had them in your wallet and they could basically query who had it, they would do a snapshot every week or so and then you would just get it sent directly to your wallet. And I still think that they have some things to work out because they do require you must have 3 to get rewards. They're going to have to do a little bit of tooling to DAO. And we can get into DAO. DAO is amazing. I talked to Noah a lot. He's one of the founders there. I mean, it's all open source. So if you know what you're doing as a developer and you know Rust, you can customize your DAO to do just about whatever you want. So that's kind of what they're doing. They're taking the base source code and they're kind of adjusting it to like meet some threshold before you get rewards. So I think they're still kind of figuring that out, but you can now actually stake them.
Nice. So the NFT project, the DEX, I also know about the Restake app. Is that right?
Yeah. I can kind of go through our 4 Lego blocks and like 4 apps and dApps that are on our platform. Alongside Backbone Labs, there's also Eris Protocol, who's just a powerhouse in the space, especially on Terra 2.0. They also provide a liquid staking token for Whale called AMP Whale. Essentially does the same thing in their own particular way. And for all those who aren't familiar, a liquid staking token or a liquid staking derivative, LST, LSD respectively. What those do, most chains, for the most part, save for Bitcoin and a handful of other forks, are now proof of stake, and there are other consensus models, but proof of stake relies on inflation to grow, right? So you have to delegate your native token, be it now Ethereum or Atom on Cosmos or Osmo on Osmosis. You stake it to a validator, and you help validate, or they help secure the network, and through your delegation you earn a share of the growth via inflation. So that's how most of these chains are powered, but most of those have unbonding times anywhere from 14 to 21 days. It's sometimes longer. And so when you stake it, you're earning these rewards, but it'll take you 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks to get out. So that's a little bit capital inefficient. And that's where LST or LSDs come into place, is that you can, through a provider such as Stride or Drop or Eris or Backbone Labs or Hydra, there's a lot of them, they stake on your behalf, and you get a token, the liquid staking token, that represents your stake and your yield. And so now you can take that and go do other things with it. You could provide liquidity. Maybe you could borrow against it. You could maybe go use it on Prism and split it into principal and yield tokens. So it unlocks a lot of capital efficiency instead of it all being sequestered. It's still validating the network, but now it's unlocked that liquidity as a derivative. So that's just a little background on liquid staking tokens. And that's Eris. They have a bunch of other apps as well, too. Then we have Raccoon Bets, which is kind of like a gaming platform, betting platform. Shark Protocol. And then things that we kind of spearheaded, or the foundation did, is they created the Furnace. There's an app where you can literally burn your whale for Ash. And Ash is the burn derivative of whale. And through that, some people kind of built a DAO around it called Ash DAO. And this is about late last year sometime. And they kind of just were people who found each other, and they built Ash DAO, and they kind of came up with a vision of what to do with it. And then we released Guppy, which is a meme token, and Ash DAO kind of took control of that. They're kind of like, they're fostering it. And now it's kind of great because it's been a year since all that kind of happened, and they just have Ash DAO just had a very successful NFT mint on Stargaze. The Guppy Yuppies, it minted out in 2 days, which is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about I forget how many crews, there's 9 or 10 crews, and each have 100, and they each represent different protocols or community members. And then they have a trait, I have one that's named after me, it's a wild one. And so people were trying to go find who had their namesake and try to do P2P trades with them. It minted out super quick. And they also, Ash DAO had gotten a grant to do this. $1 million whale, and then they were able through the NFT mint to get that back and give it to Guppy DAO, which now Guppy DAO only a meme token, but now they have funds to go earn yield and develop themselves. And Guppy is interesting too because you can burn it. They then listed it on Restake, and we get into Restake, and then basically you can now take the burn derivative of Guppy and you can stake it on Chihuahua chain and earn Chihuahua inflation. And now you get into all those things. But it's just, Ash DAO's kind of a powerhouse for us because they got a grant and they did exactly what they said they were going to do. It took them some time, but they delivered. And I know all Holly Folly, Razian, Ed, DB, all these guys, they're good guys, and they work hard. And then so I went over a bunch of things there, so I'll kind of just backtrack.
Yeah.
Restake. What is Restake? What does this mean, right?
Yeah.
And I guess I'll pause for 1 second. Just like, I think one thing that we need to work on is from Migaloo, we're a lot of like DeFi connoisseurs, and it kind of in some ways limits us a little bit because it becomes too daunting for some. So I think that's something that we do need to try to work on, is like, how do we make these complex tools simple to use? But one of those tools is Restake, and Restake is a very interesting DAO. So, and this goes back to Dopon and the last thing that he built before he got incarcerated, and that was the Alliance module, which is used on Terra 2.0, and we were one of the first to experiment with it. And what it allows you to do, it's an actual module at the chain level, and it allows you to create unique alliances that share inflation with other tokens. And you can set the reward weight, the take rate, and it's totally adjustable. You can ramp into it. And how we initially experimented, and this was like in our experimental phase, we basically made an alliance with Terra 2.0 and then with us, or what we said to them, like, hey, you can bring your Luna LSTs, those tokens we had talked about before, you can bring them over to Migaloo, and we'll give you stake it on our chain, and we'll give you some of our inflation. And then they did vice versa. They did the same for us with Amp Whale and B Whale. And that was the first iteration. And then Syncom, this is kind of like his baby. He's our CTO. He was like, what if we found a way to like share a chunk of our inflation where we airdrop a token, and this token allows you to control where that inflation goes to? And they basically chose key DAOs, Ophir DAO, Guppy DAO, Ash DAO, Lion DAO, and it was 1 million token supply, and they basically airdropped it to these people like, hey, if you use this token, it represents your share, anywhere from 5 to 6% of chain inflation. And your vote will direct where you want those rewards to go. If I was Ash DAO, I would say I want to list Ash token, and I want to direct chain inflation to my token. So then you could earn yield on this token. And everyone had a vote on how to direct that inflation. So that was kind of like, I think, one of our biggest successes. And I think Eris, I'm not taking credit for this, they built their own thing, but I do think that helped them in some ways kind of like beta test some of their ideas for Liquidity Alliance. And that's a whole nother thing on Terra 2.0. And they made it all their own. We're not taking credit for it. I mean, they built their own thing out there. So that's kind of like a little bit of a Restake. It's a little definitely on the, more complex end of wrapping your head around it. I got some notes. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything there. Let's talk about quickly. So this is, full disclosure, this is a side project that I'm involved with, Ophir DAO. That's another key DAO. And it's basically a redeemable treasury. We buy BTC and then find alpha plays on major narratives in the crypto space. So BTC core position, and then we say, what are the major narratives and what in those narratives will outperform Bitcoin the most? And that's basically what we try to acquire. So we generate cash flow, and then we buy those assets and we hold them in our treasury, and our token Ophir is redeemable for your pro rata share of the treasury. And then on top of that, we built out a bond marketplace that's represented by NFTs. We rebuilt Fusion, which Fusion is a protocol on Kujira, and Kujira is going through a migration right now. And we were going to use it to do bonds, and then because of what happened over there, we're like, well, we need to build it ourselves. So we did.
So for that Fusion, for the people that don't know, it was a way for devs to get OTC without having to sell their tokens, correct?
That's correct. And it was kind of adjustable. You could say how long the purchase window, how long it was open to be purchased, and then you could define like how long before the user can receive the tokens. Because like if I'm the bond issuer, and you could say bonds OTC, they were more OTC, but you could kind of see them as bonds. You could offer up your token and say, at a discount, I want this from the one purchasing, like I want a stable coin, and I'll give you my token at a discount. And so it was a way to capital raise, or if you have a large position and you don't want to move the market, you could say, hey, look, I need to move all this Bitcoin, and I don't want to move the market, so I'll give it to you at a discount for, whatever it is that you want. So that was kind of what it facilitated. And Ophir Bonds essentially does the same thing, a little bit more customizable and a little bit more user friendly, and that it's just a lot easier to see outright like your discounts that you're offering. We're still kind of building it out, and we're looking to launch that on Terra as well too.
And what's the name of that? What the official name?
The DAO is called Ophir DAO, and then our products are the Ophir Redemptive Treasury and Ophir Bonds. And then we're probably a ways away from this, but we want to eventually have enough clout and like, hey, look, these are useful apps, that we want to try to go for a dual grant on Terra and Migaloo and build out a lending market for both of those places. That's our plan.
Nice. Yeah.
So it's kind of like a overview of like the major dApps and protocols like on Migaloo.
Yeah. Where can users find your information besides the show notes? If you were to point them in one direction, where would you send them?
Honestly, we just hired one of our community members, longtime community member and a validator, Whaley Dow, DB from Whaley Dow.
Yeah.
Who has been making great content for Migaloo for a long time and handles a lot of like Discord tickets. He's now running like our X account for us. And so he's doing a lot of great updates. Our post quality has gotten a lot better. So I would say our X account would be a great place to start. It also has links to like the GitHub and the documentation for White Whale and Migaloo and like all of our other stuff. And then I think on top of that, app.migaloo.zone, we just released our command app, which is like a unified, everything I just talked about is mostly like accessible within this one.
Oh my gosh. It's slick too. I was on it the other day after our first initial conversation. I went on there and checked it out and just kind of dove into it, and then I made a couple bets on Raccoon Bet.
There's definitely
yeah. So nice. Yeah. So you guys also are validators, right?
Yeah. So so there's Migaloo Chain, and then there's Migaloo Foundation, and Migaloo Foundation is an outside. It's a DAO on chain, but it also has some in real life structure to it. So it's a Panamanian company for, during the time that it was created, that was the thing to do because the U.S. was not very friendly to, cryptocurrencies. Had it been now, we might have done like a Wyoming DAO LLC, but, it's just kind of where we ended up. So yeah, to kind of drive into the nuts and bolts, and this is kind of where I come in as the CFO, is we have a very successful validator operation. Right, we validate on Injecto, we validate now on Cosmos Hub, Dungeon Chain, Terra, Arai, Chihuahua, Juno. There might be a handful of others and others that we're looking at. And beyond like validating, we manage like high uptime and then participation, and then provide services where we can, like RPCs and stuff like that. And that's how we do fund our operations that way. So we try to keep some for either providing liquidity as well too, and that kind of like is a major source of revenue stream to kind of keep the engines going for Migaloo Foundation, which at this point basically we oversee like the GitHubs, the repositories, who makes changes, the White Whale protocol multisig, all the things that we all like to think the things just you go to a web page and it'll just work. There's a lot of infrastructure that is all running it. There's endpoints, APIs, there's the front end itself, JavaScript, Cosmos and J, like all of this, right? And you need a team of people to make this go. So we've got like Paul and Nick, our front end guys, our infra guys. I mean, we're a tiny team. We kind of let people cook, right? No one's gonna be like, do this way. As long as you're doing what you're supposed to do, it's all good. Cook how you can cook. We kind of basically keep the lights on and keep everything running. I try to get the books done. I came in, I also got everything on a crypto debit card auto pay. There's one vendor left, but basically we do everything essentially on chain.
Right.
So we're running an entire business. On chain. There's one vendor left, and it's really just some technical stuff we got to figure out. Yeah, and that's Spritz Finance, if anyone's interested. That's not a shill, just if you want to check it out. I'm trying to get them to see if we can get them to come to Migaloo, because I do think now with things easing in the U.S., I think we're going to see more services like that. It's really desperately needed. So yeah, we validators, and then we do Eris protocol, which I highly recommend everyone go check it out, especially if you're a validator on one of their chains that they have a liquid staking token. Because essentially you can go on there and it has this thing called the governance wars. And if you're a validator, you can go in and take their liquid staking token and vote. So you know how liquid staking tokens, they take all the underlying, so it's Luna, right? Let's just say it's Luna. So there's all this Luna that they have delegated, and then they have a validator set. And you, as a validator, can go vote for yourself to get a bigger share of that. Yeah. So that's what we do. We go play that governance war, and we make sure that we're close to the top if we can, so that we get more of those delegations towards our validator.
That's awesome. So tell me, with LSTs, how does governance work? Like, can I go vote on a proposal if I have an LST?
That's a great question. And it depends on the provider. I haven't been keeping up with Stride and a couple of the other ones. I know that Eris allows you to do that in its own way. I think Stride has gotten there. Drop, I think, lets you do that. In the beginning, no. You couldn't. I think people are heading towards that, and it's becoming more of like what's expected. Because like you don't want to give up your, like, is who you're giving your tokens to gonna vote the way you would vote? Yeah. And the answer is maybe not. So a lot of the providers have kind of headed more towards the direction of allowing. It was more just a technical thing that needed to be figured out. But I do think that a good chunk of them have a way to do that. And then the other aspect is who is on the validator set. Some are very open, some are like more restrictive and safe and cautious with it. And then validators usually have to go through some process to get listed. Are they just back scrapping their own validators, right? You'd want to make sure they're not doing that. But I do think most of the providers at this point are like, I think they have the user's best interest in mind, but they do all do it a little bit differently. But that is an important aspect to take into account.
Yeah, I mean, I constantly check MintScan, Kepler proposals, constantly to see what chain has what proposal up, what are the questions, what do they need my input about? And if I don't understand it, I have no problem hitting abstain. But if it's something I can, understand or maybe do a little bit of research and really fully understand, then I'll vote. Even though we are miles and miles apart, I believe that as a community, we're closer together than we think we are. We're literally an extension click away from sharing the same ideas, the same beliefs, and we want to make sure the chain goes on with the majority, not the minority. So, as a reminder, you guys, get out there and vote. If there's a proposal on there, spend the time to read about it. Read Commonwealth, which is basically a forum site that once they post the proposals, they tell why they want this proposal to be done the way it is. So I encourage everyone to go out there and vote and look at it. Do you guys see a lot of users ask questions when it comes to why y'all vote the way y'all do as a validator?
Not so much. I mean, generally I would say broadly and on average, most proposals are fairly drama-free because they're usually like, you need to upgrade this Cosmos module. Or is it like, it's like, okay, we're just going to say, yeah, or you abstain and let the people who know what's going on go up and talk about it. There are things that do come up that are, maybe a little bit like contentious, I would say. If we don't necessarily have a strong position one way or the other, or no one's like telling us to do a certain way, we may just abstain. Like, hey, this isn't necessarily our fight. If someone wants to come to us, because that's what happens. If there is something contentious, then people start hitting the validators up. Like, hey, you should vote this way. You should vote this way. And as long as if someone's coming to tell us and they have a case to say like, hey, this is why you should vote that way, then obviously, because we kind of like within our own community, we try to put community first. So like if someone is approaching us and it's like a number of people, hey, maybe we should dive into this and not take as neutral of approach. But I would say we opt towards neutrality unless the community otherwise has said like we want to go this direction.
That makes sense. Is there anything that you feel like we missed? Is there anything you want to share? Anything I forgot to ask?
In terms of Migaloo, I would say hop into Discord. I'm in there with DB and a couple of people will ask and answer any of your questions. There's a fair amount to go and do. Terra 2.0, there's all sorts of interesting things going on with Liquidity Alliance. That could literally be its own show. Happy to join others because there's other participants in that. And then I would say I was just a power user, right? For 4 years. I loved it and I kept on going after the crash. And I think it's when you get up and you start doing kind of like you're doing, Phillip, and you're like, I'm just gonna go learn about this. People are like, not just know when, and there's nothing wrong with this either. Like when number go up, when Lambo, like that kind of stuff. We're dealing with like digital governments, right? If you want to like build this stuff, and not everyone needs to be a builder, but there are other skills too. There's business development, there's marketing, there's art, there's so much that like it doesn't matter if you know how to code at this point, and it can't hurt. But yeah, I guess I would say if you feel like all this is beyond you, just dive in. There's so many people out there willing to help and just sit down and say like, what do you want to know? Obviously be careful too, because there's also a lot of people that will scam you. So have your wits about you and don't click on links. Anyone DMing you is probably a scam, like 99.9% of the time.
99.9% of the time. If they DM you, they're a scam.
So I say that, but also cautionary tale. Essentially, stick in the Discord. Don't click on any links, and find people you can trust, and don't corroborate that trust with others. But yeah, I would say, yeah, it's a fun ecosystem in Cosmos. I think it's ripe for some serious growth, in my opinion.
You know, we can go personal here. Like,
yeah,
I want to do a segment where I have meet the fans of Cosmos. So as a fan of Cosmos, like, what is your reason? What makes you love Cosmos? Like, what makes you a fan?
And so I just love how, and maybe some people would see this as a negative, but I just love how quickly I can go between different ecosystems. For a while, I used Umi. So right, I'm a power user, right? I go around and I shop for the best rates on money markets. That's what I do. I'll migrate debt because I know how to do it all manually. So if I find, like, I was on Umi, and it's just this. I like Umi, nothing against them, but it's a pretty small market. And I was borrowing stables to enter into position, and it's a dynamic market-driven interest rate. So if the utilization goes up, if people are borrowing closer to what is being supplied, the interest rate starts to shoot up. And it went to like 50 or 70%. And I was like, I got to figure this out. So basically, I borrowed another stable, paid off my debt with it, and I was able to migrate out of my position and close everything down. And I went and I migrated to Mars Protocol. I had options. Now, granted, this could be true of a monolithic chain too, right? Because then it's all composable. I think with the diversity of ideas and like just the different ways of doing it, I like that flexibility and like going into these different sovereign ecosystems. I just think that IBC and what is capable with it is just, I don't know. It's the home that I found after Terra, and I kind of haven't left. Though I am in other ecosystems. I'm in Cardano, Polkadot, a little bit of
Solana,
and a tiny bit of Matic, but Cosmos is basically my home. So
yeah,
the people and really that I've met is another reason I've stayed, for sure.
I know that inside the Cosmos itself, I mean, you've been here for a while, so you understand. It's like you can tell we're family because we fight amongst each other. But you better not pick on my brother, though. I tell you that.
That's true, man.
You know,
and I think one thing that Cosmos suffered from in the beginning, this app chain thesis of like tribalism, just going a little too like, this is the way, this is the way.
Yeah,
I feel like that's kind of, it's whittled down enough now to where we're kind of, okay, if we just keep on doing this, we're going to tear ourselves apart. So like with what's happening at Cosmos Hub and Skip Protocol becoming a bigger part of it, Rajira going to an app layer on Thorchain opening up IBC.
It's huge. I like Thorchain. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Powerhouse, dude.
Like, look, the concept, when I looked at Thorchain and I seen that every trade is traded in Rune. And so you had to use their token. If you had a pair, like say you wanted Osmosis but have Atom, the deck switched Atom for Rune and then Rune to Osmosis. So the underlying native token was always in use. And the utility for that, I mean, to me, I love that idea.
Take the TVL of Thorchain, divide it by 2, and then take that number and divide it by the supply of Rune, and that's like the actual value. Because like Rune is literally the other half of the LP on every other asset. Yeah, and that's all it's used for. That's it. Like they were smart to isolate it. It's not this or something else. It's just that.
Just this.
And just NFA, Ophir, that's like our core number one position besides VTC. And as soon as it becomes IBCable, we're going to put in our main treasury, and Ophir will be redeemable for a portion of that. We're betting hard on Rune and Rajira. I think Rajira is going to probably melt some faces. In my opinion, as an opinion, though I think they've got a little ways to go. But I think with the team that they have, I think they could do some pretty amazing things. But Thorchain is at the nexus of, cross-chain swaps. What more do you want? It's literally sitting, it's on Cosmos, it's on Ethereum, it's on Bitcoin. Where do you want to go?
Yeah. And one wallet, man. I don't know about you, but my browser extension wallet, it's like 15 to 20 deep.
With that screenshot you sent me, I was about to say, your browser looks a lot like mine.
Speaking of that, one last question. So can you explain on White Whale DEX how the rewards are handled for providing liquidity and then the bonding of AmpWhale and BondWhale?
All right. That's important. You just every day of 10 other things. I would say that's where White Whale is unique, is that, for the most part, we're, I would say, a fairly standard DEX. But it's our bonding mechanism that I think is unique, and that you take those LSTs we talked about, VWhale and AmpWhale, and you bond them to the DEX. And through that, every time there's a swap, some of those fees get aggregated together for the bonders. Now, where it's unique is that the longer that you're in, you get a multiplier. And so you get a bigger chunk of the pie the longer that you're in. So, I had a multiplier of, almost 3x at one point. So, if it was a 30% APY or APR, I would get 90%. And right now, our DEX is buying back more than the net in issuance that is generated per day with inflation. So, right now, with the ramp up in, volume, we're buying back from anywhere from 60,000 whale to, 120,000 whale per day. And I think net issuance is, 60,000 whale a day. So we're buying back what is being put out there via inflation. So that's our buying mechanism. And then one thing, we could do a whole show on this. I totally forgot. I should have just mentioned it. We have a whole alliance for whale BTC. So if you have that paired, it's ramping up to a 50% reward weight. So which would come to about 30% of chain inflation per year. But it has a 50% take rate. So, and that goes partially to the community pool and then back to stakers. So you'll earn that. The community pool will get permanent protocol on liquidity in whale BTC, and then stakers will get the same LP. And if you're in it and you maintain, offset the take rate, I think right now it's over 200% APR for holding whale BTC, and it's still ramping up into its final reward weight of 50%. So we could dive into that. I mentioned it earlier. That's my bad.
Yeah. And it's the same. I can sit here and talk about this thing for hours. I tell everybody, talk about it all day long. I can literally sit here for hours. Everybody that listen and then that knows the lingo, and I literally talk about this stuff for hours. That's the main reason why I want to do this. You know what I mean? Spread the word and talk about it.
Absolutely, man. Well, be sure to go check it. We're trying to hitch Migaloo, the chain itself, to BTC. And I also am trying to reach out to Babylon and seeing if there's a way that we can integrate with them. Babylon is another SDK chain and basically does Bitcoin security as a service, essentially. You could almost say if you integrate with it, you're almost like a Bitcoin L2, but I got to do more research. But I'm really trying to hitch ourselves to that. And this alliance that we've built out through Whale WBTC LP, the liquidity pool on Migaloo, you provide that, you can earn some pretty decent APR as of right now. And all that's available on app.migaloo.zone. But should have mentioned it earlier, could have dove in a little bit more, but definitely could talk about it on another show, episode, however we do this, man. I'm around.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, in the show notes, I'll have all the links, Twitter links, Discord invite links. That way you guys can get part of the community. Make sure that you send collab. Did I say it right?
Calaibi.
Calaibi.
It's a very interesting shape. Go check it. Just type in Calaibi Yao, just as it is, CALABIYAU, into a search, and it's a very interesting geometric shape.
Okay.
It's I was wearing like reading science books back in the day, and yeah, it's just one of those cool shapes I came across, and I was like, I'm gonna take that.
Nice. Yeah, make sure you give him a shout and tell him hi. Tell him thank you for being on this show. But hey, yeah, I really do appreciate you coming on.